We're following very closely the famous podcast known as Serial. Adnan Syed, he was convicted of the murder of a 1999 case involving his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend at the time. His attorney just tweeting out this afternoon that his judge has granted a motion for a new trial. He has long maintained his innocence. 100 million people have downloaded this podcast, followed this close casely, and wondered if a judge might possibly vacate the conviction. In fact, this afternoon, we are learning the attorney confirming for Adnan Syed that, in fact, he will get a new trial. Adnan's brother, this is according to his attorney, says that Adnan's brother had a feeling in his heart that a new trial would be granted. That's coming from his brother. And again, the attorney also tweeting out that this conviction they will be granted a new trial and allowed to vacate the conviction, partially over the witness of a cell phone, the cell phone witness. We're going to take you to a press conference that's expected any minute now, where the attorney for Adnan Syed will talk about him being able to get a new trial. We'll continue to follow this and bring it to you.
Now, Judge Welch has granted our post-conviction motion, and he has awarded a new trial for Adnan. This is obviously an incredible victory. I'm trying to act calm right now, but we have been fighting for this day for I think it's been about 8 years now, and it's been a grueling fight, and there have been a lot of disappointments along the way, and there were times when it looked like we had lost, but you know, we've made it, and we got him a new trial. And I will curb my enthusiasm because there's still a lot more fighting to go. He's still not out of jail. And as I said, after the post-conviction hearing, we're going to keep fighting until he's out of jail. So we've made a lot of progress, but we're still not there. One of the first things we're going to be looking at is whether we can get him out on bail, because as of now, his conviction has been vacated. It's going to be up to the state whether they want to appeal Judge Welch's order or whether they want to just go forward with a new trial. So the ball's kind of in their court, and we will wait and see what their next move is. The opinion, and has the actual opinion been released? Does anyone know?
Yeah.
So if you've seen it, it's very interesting. It was granted on the cell tower issue. And I've only had a time to skim it, but he denied the Asia McClain issue and granted it on the cell tower issue. And you know, we'll have more time to digest that and analyze that in the next week. So far, I've just been able to skim it, but it looks like it's about a 55, 60-page opinion. So obviously, the judge put a lot of time into it and wrote his opinion very thoroughly. We have tried to contact Adnan without any success. We've been calling the prison in Cumberland ever since we got this news. Unfortunately, we have not been able to get through to him directly, but it's my guess that the news has spread to him by now. You know, he's a well-liked person at that prison, and you know, the guards are human beings, and the guards read the newspaper, and I have little doubt that someone has given him a heads up as to what happened today in Baltimore City. So there's a lot of people who have been part of this effort that's gone on really for 17 years. First, I want to thank Adnan's family, who I had a chance to talk to briefly today. You know, I've always felt it's an honor to be able to represent Adnan, and I am truly inspired by their faith in me to let me keep going as the lead counsel in this case. So they've been incredibly supportive. They are the best clients that any lawyer could ever wish for. That goes for Adnan, that goes for his parents, that goes for his brother. The whole family is fantastic. You know, my partners here, Lily and Chris Nieto, have done incredible work on this. It's been a team effort. Rabia Chaudhry, who unfortunately can't be here today, but Rabia has led this whole fight for 17 years. We could not have done it without her. Susan Simpson, Colin Miller, and the undisclosed podcast team. You know, Sarah Koenig put out Serial, but the real investigation that has yielded real results, a lot of that occurred by the work of Susan Simpson and Colin Miller. So we are eternally grateful for them, and especially Susan's work on the cell tower issue. We couldn't have done it without them. So if anyone has any questions.
What was the family's reaction? What were they saying?
I think for those of you who know Yusuf, Adnan's little brother, and it's kind of funny because I've seen him grow up in the course of my representation of Adnan from a like a kid to now he's a man and he's become eloquent. But they were at times speechless, so I had to check and make sure the phone line had not gotten cut off. But they're delighted, and I know how much this has weighed on me, but that's probably a fraction of the pressure that it has put on that family. They're happy.
Can you explain the part of the opinion that talks about Asia McClain's affidavit? Her most recent affidavit was retransmitted to the appeals court. What does that mean?
And again, this is, I haven't reviewed the full opinion. I think probably based on what you're telling me that refers to is that while we were in the appellate process, we introduced the new affidavit from Asia McClain, and I think that's probably what they're referring to. We supplemented some of our filings with that affidavit, which was instrumental in getting us where we are today. Does that make sense?
No.
Good. It's not supposed to.
Okay.
You had mentioned that you're still have a long way to go. How concerned are you that the state of Maryland can appeal this and you can end up back to square one all again?
They absolutely could, and I expect that to happen. I've always thought that win or lose at this phase, we're going to end up in Maryland's appellate courts. So I fully expect the state to appeal it, and we're prepared to fight. Our heels are dug in, and the last 3 or 4 decisions in this case have gone our way, but we know that the state's not going to give up, and we'll be ready.
How does the bail work at this point?
I don't know. We're gonna look into that over the weekend, but as to whether we want to pursue it and how we would pursue it, and quite frankly, there haven't been a whole lot of cases that have ended up in this posture. So, but it's something we're going to look at and start moving on in the coming weeks.
So since the state would have to appeal, this is a thing still that the AG's office would take up. It wouldn't go to the state's attorney to re-prosecute, but they would. Is it your understanding they would continue with this case?
Generally speaking, the AG's office handles appeals, so you're right about that. If it went up to the appellate courts, I would expect them to handle it. If sometimes the state makes decisions where they decide that they would rather just retry the case. If they were to make a decision like that, I would imagine then the case would get shifted over to the state's attorney's office, and it would be up to them to re-prosecute the case if that's what they wanted to do.
Given that you do expect an appeal, do you think that affects the bail thing that you're talking about?
It could. There's different standards depending on what phase of the proceeding you're in, and that's something we've got to look into and figure out our strategy.
Justin, do you know, because it was granted on the failure to cross-examine the cell phone tower expert, that the new trial has to only solely focus on that, or is it a wide range?
Oh no, it would be. I mean, the conviction is vacated, so think of it as the conviction is erased. it's gone. He's not, as of this day, he's not convicted anymore. So if the state were to retry him, essentially we would be starting from scratch. I mean, the whole trial could potentially start again. That'd be interesting, huh?
What's the timeline on this? What are we looking at?
I don't know.
That was Adnan Syed's lawyer. You may recall this is a famous podcast known as Serial, and the first season featured Adnan Syed. It was a murder conviction back for the murder in 1999 of an ex-girlfriend. I want to bring in Paula Reed. Paula, it was interesting because there was a woman who claimed that she was with him at a library that night, but that's not why they overturned this. Can you explain a little bit more about why this was vacated?
That's exactly right. About 4 months ago, the state of Maryland granted them a hearing to make their arguments for why they thought that he believed he should get a new trial. Now, they've been making these arguments for years, but partly because he was the subject of that popular podcast, he got this hearing. And they had 2 reasons that they pressed upon the court that they should get a new trial. The first was that alibi witness, who they argued his previous attorneys did not take seriously and did not use sufficiently in his trial. And the second was the use of cell phone tower location information. So those are the little pings that your cell phone sends into certain towers. That evidence can be used in trial to try to pinpoint your location at the time of a crime. His new lawyers argued that his old lawyers didn't properly cross-examine the expert on that particular evidence. So when the judge made his order today, they argued that they are granting this new trial based on the cell phone tower evidence alone. They denied it based on the witness. They said that doesn't matter, that's not enough. But they said, look, your attorney did not properly cross-examine this witness about this cell phone tower location evidence, and therefore we're granting you a new trial. But Rena, it doesn't matter why he gets the new trial. The fact is his conviction is vacated, although they do expect the state of Maryland will appeal.
And he was saying also, the attorney was saying that they haven't reached him to let him know that he's got a new trial, but they're assuming that the folks over there have notified him to let him know. It was also interesting, Christina Gutierrez, who was the first attorney to represent him, she was actually disbarred. What happened there?
It's been a long time since I've looked at what happened exactly to her, but it's not necessarily her overall performance, because sometimes if they believe that your lawyer was under the influence or somehow corrupt, didn't have proper training, sometimes they will offer you a new trial if they think it was overall ineffective assistance of counsel. But here they argued 2 specific things, and the judge only granted it on one, and that was the specific cross-examination of an expert based on his assessment of cell phone tower location data.
Oh, that's interesting. It was that one and not the attorney representing him. What happens next, Paula, in this?
Well, even the lawyer said it's a little bit unclear. He's not sure whether or not he'll be able to get his client out of jail. This is such a unique situation, but he is confident that he will win on appeal, that they will get a new trial on this entire case. And he also said that he is confident that he will be able to get his client, acquitted. But it's unclear whether or not he'll remain behind bars while he awaits this new trial. Like he said, bail issues, it's not clear. This is a very unique situation. But the first thing they know that's going to happen is that the state of Maryland will very likely appeal.
100 million people around the world downloaded the podcast Serial to hear his story. Paula Reed, thank you very much for joining us.